and welcome to this special event where Sigmax Field Service Solutions and Dime Software are joining forces to present an entry-level introduction to field service management using Business Central, powered by a few of our own software products. You don't need any knowledge of our own applications to be able to follow along, but you do need to have at least some basic understanding of Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central or its predecessor, Microsoft Dynamics NAV. I am glad to announce that I'm being joined today by Manuel from Sigmax Field Service Solutions. He'll be co-hosting this presentation with me. Near the end of the presentation, we'll share our contact details with you, but before we do that, we want to keep this introduction as short as possible and get to the fun part as quickly as we can. As mentioned already, the topic of today is field service in Business Central, and specifically how you can use standard Business Central and plug and play third-party tools to close the missing gaps. After providing a little bit of context, we are going to spend the majority of this presentation showcasing our products and how they work with Business Central, and also how they complement each other indirectly through Business Central. Good. Our goal of this presentation then is to show you just one way to compose a technological solution to field service management. Both Sigmax Field Service Solutions and Dime Software operate in this niche where we can thrive, and that is the Dynamics channel, of course. To put things into perspective, after a dozen years or so of doing this line of work, a few patterns have emerged that offer insights into how companies approach getting their work done. We're going to focus strictly on the technological aspects and won't delve into business processes or anything beyond that. The first contender is the good old way through pen and paper. It's so simple, but it can be quite effective, where office workers keep a ledger somewhere in the office and send people on their way. Small teams that operate in a fairly straightforward business environment can get by without needing much more than that. The main competitor, I would say, of any software product ever made would have to be Excel. It is the software that keeps so many companies and so many industries afloat. It's an absolute jewel of an application. There's nothing more that I can say about Excel. It's really powerful. Most people know how to use it, and to some extent, it gets the job done. The new kid on the block that Microsoft is pushing hard these days is its integration with their own Dynamics 365 field service solution. And they go toe-to-toe with the composition model using third-party tools such as Sigmax Connect and Dime.Scheduler. Another relative newcomer is the new wave of low-code platforms. Low-code has been around for a while, but now with the new generation of low-code platforms, perhaps this time it will stick around after the buzz has settled. And lastly, the classic one has to be custom software development. Custom software has its place in the world, and it sounds appealing, and it could be and would be the perfect choice for those with the skills and the resources to develop and especially maintain the software they create. It can be overwhelming, I think, to find the right solution for you or for your customers. Ideally, you would just use one solution that has all the features coming right out of the box. But it's quite unlikely to ever happen, so you have to link and use a few products to get to your desired outcome. A few things to keep in mind when you're building or composing a solution include what comes out of the box. And does that meet the needs to get your work done? If it's good enough, let's say if it covers about 80% of the required functionality, you may want to stop there before you start pre-optimizing, while your time and resources might be put to better use in other areas. We find that many organizations tend to fall into this trap of pre-optimization and forget that technology is just a means to achieve a certain result. Also, to what extent can you configure and customize a solution with minimum effort and risk? What are the costs associated with a particular solution? Things to keep in mind would be licensing, hosting, updates, license and feature upgrades, etc. Also, who's going to support the solution? Who will maintain, update, patch software? What's going to happen when the vulnerability is detected? And so on and so forth. I could keep going for a while, but that's not why we're here. We are here today to make a case for the formula of using off-the-shelf solutions made by ISVs. The considerations here are exactly the same as I just explained a few seconds ago. On the flip side, some arguments why you would want to plug and play third-party tools in Business Central are that, in particular, in this channel, ISVs are quite accessible. They're typically rather small, and you can get in touch with the people making the decisions quite easily, which may help to build trust, and you may even have a say in what they're going to build and develop next. ISVs in this channel also tend to focus much more on their products and rely on their partners to handle time-consuming work like implementation projects, workshops, support, etc. And also, as our livelihood depends on it, we develop, distribute, and maintain our software to keep it as relevant and up-to-date as possible. You see, software rot, that's a real thing. And let me tell you, it's messy and it gets very, very costly very quickly. And lastly, using Business Central as the hub, we can tag along this tech giant that is Microsoft and distribute our software as extensions, and therefore provide this plug-and-play experience with minimum effort. Right, I think that's enough talk for now, and let us show you some action. What we're going to do next is basically go full circle and simulate a real-life situation, albeit a slightly simplified situation. We're going to begin in Business Central and create a service order. Then we're going to look for a technician that can go out and execute the work that has been assigned to him. To do that, we're going to use Dime.Scheduler. When we found the right person for the job in the planning tool, we are going to lock in the appointment and update the service order back in Business Central. Once it's in Business Central, it's up to the technician to carry out the work. And for that, we're going to use Sigmax Connect. This mobile app picks up the planning and provides the capabilities necessary for the resource to do his job. I will send occasionally updates back to Business Central. So you see, this is the theme. The story begins in Business Central and the story ends in Business Central with two very small detours to Dime.Scheduler and Sigmax Connect, respectively. What I'm going to do now is switch to the next tab in my browser where you will find a standard version of Business Central Cloud. It's the same story basically for Business Central on-prem and NEV, but today I'm going to stick with BC Cloud. Pretty much everything that I'm going to show is standard Business Central except for one button. So I'm going to go over this part quite quickly and just head straight to the service orders list and create a new service order. I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible so we can keep focus and maintain a fast-paced demo. So what I'll do first is select a customer. And once I've found my customer, that will populate a bunch of address fields here, which we'll use in a second in the planning tool. I'm also going to indicate explicitly the service order type. I'm going to set this for a reason because, as we'll see in a bit, is that we use a color coding system in our planning tool to link these service order types to a color. So you can see right away on the planning board with what kind of work we're dealing. We're going to do something very similar, by the way, with the repair status code of the service item. which is represented by a horizontal bar at the bottom of the appointment on Dime.Scheduler's planning board. But let's start with the service order type. I'm going to mark this as a general service order type. And then obviously we need to pick an item that we're going to provide the service for. There we go. Now that we have this simple order ready to go, we can start looking for a technician to do the work. And for that, we're going to use our trusty planning tool, Dime.Scheduler. Now, Dime.Scheduler itself is not built in Business Central. So you're not going to see much direct evidence of its existence in BC. It is rather a graphical planning layer around Business Central data that allows you to plan basically anything and anyone, as you can see on screen right now. In a nutshell, Dime.Scheduler is about planning resources and tasks. A resource can be anything or anyone, and a task can be anything. So it's up to you or your customer to decide what is your definition of a resource and what constitutes a task. Today, of course, we're going to plan service technicians and service orders. You can tell there's a lot on screen, and I believe I will get to most of it, but I would like to highlight at this point 2 components on this planning view. Let us start with this component at the top left corner of the screen. This is a component called the Open Task List. As you can imagine by its name, this list shows all the work that still needs to be assigned to a technician. And through drag and drop, we want to get this list as empty as possible and fill up the schedule of our technicians as much as we can. Drag and drop is done from this list to our planning board, which we can see here in the middle of our screen. Naturally, the planning board is the center of this application, and it's where you will fill up the schedule of your technicians. On the left-hand side of the component, we can see our list of resources. And as you can see, the majority of our resources here are our technicians. But if you look at the bottom, we also have a couple of vehicles that we want to plan as well. On the right-hand side of the component, we see our timeline, and then in the middle, these colorful blocks, that's our schedule that we made earlier. There is much more on screen. As you can tell, we have components like a map, like a resource filters, like a capacity and planning pivot grid. These are supporting components to help the planner find the best resource for the job. They can make this decision based on location, based on attributes, and based on availability, and any kind of combination you can think of. I'll get back to some of these components in just a little bit, but first, we want to get that order that we just made in Business Central available in Dime.Scheduler. To do that, let's go back to the order in Business Central. And a common theme will be that you have to go to the Actions item in the ribbon, and then you'll see quite often a submenu for Dime.Scheduler where you can then send the order or remove the order from the planning tool. That's it. There is a lightweight extension for Dime.Scheduler in Business Central that connects Business Central data like resources, like service orders, like resource capacity projects. It will connect it with our planning tool. And also the opposite is true. It will provide the functionality to write back planning data in the planning board back into Business Central. So let's go ahead and send this order to the open task list. What happens at this point is we're going to gather everything that is relevant for planning, information like the address, like contact information, customer, service items, everything that you can imagine. We're going to gather that data graph and make it available as one single row in our open task list. So we can have a look there, and then we should see a new item show up end of the list with number 151. So let's have a look there and see if it has been added. I'm going to zoom back in on our task list, and then we can see I have set a sorter on our project number column. So I should scroll down just a little bit to see this order 151 shows up automatically. So I didn't have to do anything. It just pushed in real time to our browser. Now, once a task shows up in this list, it's completely up to the planner to determine what he will do next. If the planner already knows who's going to do that order and when, all he needs to do is drag that task and drop it somewhere on the planning board. But naturally, the planner may want to use more suggestions from a tool like Dime.Scheduler to help him find the best suitable and available resource. One of those dimensions could be location. If you know the location in Business Central, which we do, you can then click on that task in your list. And when there's location known for that, the map will readjust its position and it will add a marker to the map to show where that order needs to take place. So you can see this blue marker, when I hover over that, that's where this order 151 has to be done. And then we can use the locations of our resources to look who's close by and who's available to perhaps do a last minute stop to help out that customer. These purple markers show locations of our resources. Location can be based on actual locations through track and trace devices in people's cars, or it can be something more static like the employee address in Business Central. Whatever location mode you're using, you can simulate a trip to see how long it would take for a certain resource to get to that customer. So for example, we can see how long it would take for Richard to go there and help out the customer. So based on current traffic information, we'll have a simulation and indication how long it would take. So it would take just under 44 minutes to do a 21-kilometer drive. Now, if we have a look at the planning, we can see for Richard Clarkson on the planning board, which is this row here, that there's not much going on for him that week. So purely based on his location, can we decide to assign order 151 to that resource, Richard. That's just one side of the story. If you want to be absolutely, completely sure that this resource can actually do that job, you may want to use another component called the resource filters component. And perhaps I can visualize that one alongside with our map. So you can see both the map, the open task list, and the filter builder in the same view. What this component essentially is, it is a query filter builder, allowing you to look for resources with certain attributes. And out of the box Business Central, we can use resource skills and service zones, but you could add any dimension imaginable. Classic examples would be departments, languages, qualifications, certifications, you name it. As long as you can manage that data in Business Central, you can use it in Dime.Scheduler to help you find the right and most suitable resource for the job. What you can do is manually look and construct a filter to look for resources with certain properties, certain attributes. So for example, if I know by heart what are the required skills, what's the preferred region, I can construct a filter like that. Perhaps I can throw in a region as well, like that. And then you hit this button right here, which will then apply and query that list of resources and will show the resources that meet these criteria. If your criteria are a bit too strict, you may want to narrow it down or to the opposite, update your filter, reapply, and you may, in this case, see more people with that skill, but they might operate in a different region. It's ultimately up to the planner to decide if he likes what he sees in this result set. If anybody's available, he can decide to assign either one of these resources or ignore all of it. That's his call ultimately. We can take it one step beyond that. If you know beforehand what are the required attributes that the resource needs to have, you can pass along this requirement with your task to Dime.Scheduler, in which case this filter button will be enabled next to your task. And then of course, the idea is that you can click on that, which will then populate the builder with the required attributes and will then also immediately execute that query to the list of resources. So we see in one click of a button for 151, these are the three technicians that we can consider based on the required attributes. But again, he can ignore all of that if he doesn't see any fit in this result set. But in this case, what we see is this resource Richard Clarkson shows up again. He was the resource that was sort of close by, and he's also completely free for the remainder of the week. But whatever the call is, it's ultimately a very simple action that the planner needs to do to assign a task to a resource. Just drag your task and then drop it somewhere on the planning board, which you think makes sense. So I'm going to abide by that resource, Richard Clarkson. I'm going to put it on the books for the 20th right here, first thing in the morning. As soon as I release this, if I drop it on the planning board, a whole bunch of digital witchcraft is going to happen behind the scenes to make this planning data available in other applications like Outlook or like a Power Automate flow. And most importantly, Business Central. Whatever we do on this planning board should eventually end up in Business Central, so you can do things like reporting and perhaps even trigger other third-party tools like the one we're going to see in a few minutes. But before I take you back to Business Central, what I'd like to show you is that blue background color of this appointment is linked to that service order type that we indicated just a minute ago in Business Central. So I can double click on my appointment. If we then take you back to this combo box here, we can see this service type is linked to this blue background color. So you can see right away what kind of work we're dealing with, which kind of resource on any given date and time. And also perhaps if I happen to know that we need some kind of special car to do this job, we can also assign a vehicle or any other resource to the same appointment. What you can do there is select your appointment, hit the Shift key on your keyboard, and then drop it onto your resource that you want to assign to at the same time. So they have to go together to execute that work. The point of showing this is that each block that you drop on this planning board should result in an equivalent record in Business Central. So what I'm going to do now is go to Business Central. You can do it the long way and just go manually in Business Central to that order, or you can be fast and efficient by right-clicking on your appointment. That opens up the context menu, and then at the bottom, we have a link section with links to SharePoint documents, links to the customer card in Business Central, but more interestingly, that service order that is linked to this appointment. When I click on that, basically what happens is a new tab in the browser is opened, and it will take us back to this original service order 151. What we're going to do with our standard connector for Dime.Scheduler in Business Central is create resource allocation line for each block that you drag and drop on the planning boards. In which case here, I have assigned Richard Clarkson and his car number 1. So you should see 2 lines in that table. And that table is hidden away behind the lines here. And then we can open up the resource allocation lines where we should see 2 records show up, one for Richard, one for this car number 1 for the 20th of September. And just to show you the real time and bidirectional nature of the integration, whenever you do any kind of modification to your schedule, if you change the dates, if you change the resources, it triggers automatically an update to Business Central. So if you then go back to that same tab here, hit F5, you'll see the allocation date will be updated instantly. This is a key corner feature of Dime.Scheduler. It's bidirectional and it's real time. You don't have to do any kind of manual synchronizations to get data back in Business Central and have this single version of the truth in Business Central where you should manage all of that master and transactional data. Good. Just to recap, I created a service order. I sent it over to Dime.Scheduler where I looked for a technician and looked for a suitable date and time to go out and do that work. One of the key deliverables is in Business Central, as we just seen, are these resource allocation lines. It's this standard table of resource allocation lines that is the glue between Business Central, Dime.Scheduler, and the field service app that we're going to see next. Once a resource allocation line has been created, that's when this field service app kicks in. And at this point, I would like to invite Manuel to the virtual stage and have him show him one of the absolute best field service applications out there.
Thank you, Hendrik. It's great to be here today. And next up, as Hendrik mentioned, we will close the full circle loop, and I will show you how our solution, how our mobile platform supports field technicians and make them using them our solution to easy handle and manage service orders in the field. As Hendrik mentioned, he showed already that the starting point will be a service order standard within BC, and that's what is prepared right now. On the left, you see some service orders I prepared. And on the right, you see the screen of my handheld, which I'm currently going to use to demonstrate how our mobile solution can manage service orders. So the first step that we're going to do is drag and drop and plan a service order for Mike. And Mike is currently the user I'm using, which is signed in using our handheld. And once I plan it in, planning data is sent back to the Business Central, and our extension automatically picks up this data and syncs the planning towards Mike. This is happening instantly and real time, and this is very important because planners want to make sure that what is planned is also visible with actual planning data towards the field technician. If I change the planning, for example, earlier in time, you see on the right, it's loading. Without any interaction, the planning data is updated. Next up, I will show you how our mobile solution handles a service order in the field and helps the technician to easily go through the process and support him by doing his work and easily do the things regarding the service order, booking his materials, managing his hours, and getting the signature from the customer to wrap up and finish the service order. Before we go through the process, it might be good to give you more in-depth some information about our product. In the upper left corner, you have a general menu, and this menu provides several tools, options, modules that can be used by field service companies. And it's a mix between managing timesheets, doing stock management, for example, ordering materials, exchanging materials, counting materials, receiving messages, and several options to use that are useful for field service companies. The mobile application can be used on a smartphone, but also on a tablet, and it's fully native developed, and it has fully offline support. And offline is a very important feature because field technicians come in places where there's no connectivity. And in our case, the field technician doesn't have to do anything regarding his work because it is automatically saved locally in an encrypted database. And once the connection is restored, the data is automatically pushed back towards the relevant systems. So as you've seen, I've planned in the service order. You see it in the agenda of Mike, and there's some standard information visible there regarding the service order, planning data, the service order type, some information about the customer. Once I click it, the order is opened, and this is the first step of we call it our workflow mechanism, where we guide the field technician through the process, handling a service order in the field. The first screen is a summary template, a summary screen, where relevant information can be shown to the technician. This screen is customizable and can be mapped towards data within Business Central, which is available regarding the customer, the service item, or other relevant information. Once I press on transit, the order changes its status and an update is pushed back to Business Central and picked up by Dime, and a time marker color is changed in the scheduling plan board. I'm traveling now, and what I can do easily is press the navigation button in the bottom right corner. Once I do that, it will pop up my navigation app. This can be Google Maps, can be Waze, it depends on what you have installed. It will use the address from the service order, and it will activate my navigation. This is very handy because the field technician in this case doesn't have to enter the address manually within his navigation app. Let's go back to the app. Once I come on location, I can start my order. And in this case, the application is foreseen with a service workflow template, and it shows here one service item line for one service item. In this case, it's a heating installation, which we're coming for to service. If there would be more service item lines for the service order, you would see them below this line. If I click, and we call this on this activity, this is a specific activity regarding the service item. I can see some relevant information, and I can start this activity. Next up, we configured a standard task menu where several functionalities are shown. In this case, we configured a checklist that has to be managed by the field technician before he can finish his order. This checklist functionality gives you the ability to use checklists, configure several checklists that are bound to a certain service item or to a certain service order type. And you have a lot of options here to use. This can be fields where you can enter serial numbers, integers. You can use booleans and several other options to go through a checklist that can be configured per workflow. In this example, it's a straightforward checklist. Everything is okay. And for example, in this workflow, I added an option where you can say whether there's damage on location. If I push yes, you see a next question is popped up. If I put it on no, the question is gone. Let's say there was damage on the location and I'm helping the technician to take a picture. I'm going to take a picture. I'm going to save it, and you have the ability to draw and mark the damage sign. As you can see, I finished the checklist. There was some damage. The application forced or made it mandatory towards the technician that he had to take a picture, and we save the checklist and go back through the process. I did some repair and I used a certain article. In this case, for example, a reservoir. You can search in this module, but you can also use barcoding scanning, NFC or QR to book in materials. If I go to the next flow screen in the application, I press on next, it will ask me to book in the time that is spent during work. It will help me calculate the time because it will say in the bottom how many time the system has calculated from the starting point up until this point. So I can manage my hours. I click on plus. I select the work that has been done. And I can modify the duration, but in this case, that's 5 minutes, and I save it. When I click next, I can say the activity, the service item has been serviced. I did some repair. There was some damage that I filled in. I took a picture and I finished the activity that was planned. Next up is that I can, because there are no additional activities, there are no additional service items that I need to service, I can wrap up and finish the service order and go through the next step in the flow. If I click on finish, I can say the project is ready. In this case, the service order is ready. If I say it's not ready or other status, it will pop up additional fields where details can be filled in to explain why it was aborted or not finished. All these fields are customizable on statuses that the end customer wants to use. In this case, it was ready. I press on next. I get a customer approval screen. In this case, the customer information is already filled in. And the only thing I need to do is get the signature from the customer. If I click on signature, a pop-up will be shown, some signature information is shown, and I press OK. Last but not least, once we finished the service order, I configured an additional screen, and in this screen, the field technician can ask several questions towards the customer. Do you want to receive the report digital, yes or no? You can tell how it has to be communicated with an email, and the email can be filled in. Are there additional questions, yes or no? This can be used for commercial purposes. For example, the field technician can ask the customer if he's interested in additional services or a new contract. All these fields and checklists are customizable. Once I go through the process and click next, the service order ends and I can wrap up and close it. And the data is synced back to Business Central to the service order that was just finished. So if we go back and switch back to Business Central and we open the relevant service order, it was the different order. Let me open it. We go to the service item line. We look in the service item worksheet. There you see the booked in material that I used and the hours that were registered. It will be right back to Business Central regarding the service order. So to summarize, what you've just seen is that the starting point was a service order which was already prepared within Business Central. We planned it using Dime.Scheduler. The planning is sent back to Business Central and picked up by our extension instantly. Changing planning data is immediately synced back to our mobile solution. It's shown in the agenda of the field technician. And from that point of view, the technician can handle the service order on his mobile solution. What you've just seen is the standard workflow. These workflows are highly customizable based on the wishes of the customer regarding a certain order type, maintenance, service, inspection. Additional modules can be activated and can be easily activated per need for the customer. One important thing that's also good to mention is that the solution is multi-language. In the settings, you can change the language. Currently, we're supporting 4 languages. Additional language tables can be easily added by translating the labels that are available in the solution. To wrap it up, we finished the service order. The data is sent back to Business Central. And in this case, the field technician easily clicked through the process, finished it, and data is sent back.
All right. Thank you, Manuel. Now, I believe we made our point, and the message that we're trying to convey is quite clear, but I'll do a brief summary anyway to wrap up the last, I think, 30, 40 minutes or so. I hope we both made it crystal clear that standard Business Central is at the heart of it all. The data that matters remains in Business Central, so you can have to have this nice single version of the truth in one Business Central. And the extensions that we provide just tag along whatever you manage in there. So you bring over your data to the extensions and you set it up the way that you want it to. Both applications are flexible and give you a lot of wiggle room to set it up just so. The idea that we have is that we bring a batteries included experience where you still have this possibility to tweak the solution according to your needs. So that's mostly going to be configuration in our software and customizations to the connectors in Business Central that control the message flow to and from the extensions. And last but not least, our products are complementary, as I hope you've seen, and yet there is no direct dependency between them. You can plug in either application in Business Central, and it will just work with the other right away out of the box. Also good to know is that our product teams are in touch with each other, and we're trying to make our products more complementary and more powerful without ever forgetting the key cornerstone, the key principle of Business Central at the very center of it all. That gives partners and customers the chance to intervene, intercept, and even tailor their composition where needed to close the missing gaps. Now, if you want to get a closer look at our products, feel free to use any of the links you see on screen. We have many common resellers, so it's possible that your ERP partner can also assist you with both Dime.Scheduler and Sigmax Connect at the same time. And if you want to get a personal touch, feel free to get in touch with us directly by email, and we'll be happy to assist you with any inquiry you may have. So on behalf of Sigmax Field Service Solutions and Dime Software, I would like to thank you very much for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.